The Lead. Sponsored by Lavish Boutique, Lavish Coffee, Jasper Veterinary Clinic, Jasper Bone and Joint, and Carl Cannon Chevrolet Buick GMC.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Greg Tinker for The Lead, and I am really excited today to have as our guest Coach Steve Woodard. I guess coach is appropriate now, right? And Steve Woodard for a long time, who's been an instructional coach for lots and lots of kids. I don't even know if you know how many you've instructed across the years.
Well, there's been a lot. I've got over 300 right now that I still work with across the country, so there's a lot.
So he's been a busy man and even busier now. So it's good to have Steve with us today, and we're going to talk some about his playing days at Hartselle and then what he's doing now for our local community and area as the baseball coach at Bevill State, and the campus is in, or the field at least, is in Fayette. So, Steve, let's go back to your childhood growing up in Hartselle. And anybody who knows anything about high school baseball, when they hear the word Hartselle, they immediately think, well, they'll be in the state championship, right? Because that's just kind of what Hartselle does. So tell us the secret of what happens in Hartselle to produce such great baseball players and teams.
Well, it all started back in '88. William Booth took over the program in '88, and from then it took off. He actually was a math teacher, calculus teacher, and he's actually a better teacher than he was baseball coach. But he took a lot of the same things that he did doing, in the math room and calculus and numbers, and the more you do it, the better you get at it, and that's what he did. He kind of relayed that into practice, and and that transferred into games. And luckily, he had some great players, great athletes coming through at that time. And but Hartselle baseball would not be Hartselle baseball without William Booth.
Well, and what some folks may not know about Coach Booth with his incredible success, and we might just add that he just recently passed, battled cancer and overcame that for a period of time, but just recently passed. But he didn't play baseball. He was not, quote unquote, not an athlete, but man, became a legendary coach. So it just goes to show that you don't have to necessarily grow up playing that sport to be successful at it.
It does. I mean, he was actually a pretty good basketball player, just didn't play baseball, and he actually took the program over because his son Mason was actually going to be a junior, and he didn't want somebody else taking the program over, and he took it over, and 9 state championships later, that's where we're at.
As they say, the rest is history.
Yes, sir.
But there's also got to be something within the community, right? I mean, you got to have a lot of perhaps dads or former players of Coach Booth and who invest in kids at a young level. Is that what's that look like in Hartselle?
Well, baseball is big. All sports is big in Hartselle. But it all goes back to my mother and Jim Tapscott, a guy named Jim Tapscott. They started the Dixie Youth Baseball Program back, when I was in 4th grade, and brought that there. And from then it just kind of took off. And youth baseball was a lot different at that point compared to travel baseball now, and it's that's kind of went away there, that part of it. But the atmosphere with the travel baseball and all the kids that are always playing baseball, and still they do have park ball, and but we used to have over 600 kids just in youth baseball there. So that's where it all kind of started, and that's where it's at now.
So you had a lot of success there as an individual player, but also as a team. Talk a little bit about your high school years, the championships that you won, and then what opportunity you were presented as a result of that.
Well, I'll never forget Coach Booth. I broke my ankle in 7th grade, 8th grade, playing basketball, one ankle each year. And but I'll never forget Coach Booth coming to the house when I was 7th or 8th grade, and he's like, "Hey, everything's gonna be good. You get here at 9th grade, I want you to be here on the varsity. And so from that point on, from 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, I was around a lot of very, very good baseball players, even at a young age, and had to I wasn't the best player on the team, actually, all the way up until probably my junior year. There were some better players, but 9th grade year, we won the state championship. 10th grade year, we won the state championship. My 11th grade year was actually the best team we had. And we were ranked, I think we finished the year ranked number 5 in the country. And it was actually funny because 2 guys, a guy by the name of Courtney Duncan from Daphne, Alabama, is who we played. He and I both made it to the big leagues, and we both pitched against each other in the finals, and we were both knocked out in the 3rd inning of the game. And so it's kind of ironic. And then my senior year, we ended up, kind of running away with it, and 10 running there in the state championship both games, and so I was fortunate enough to be on some very, very good teams, win 3 state championships and 1 runner-up, and not always the best team wins, but that's how that's why you play baseball.
Well, and that was back in the day too, when you played one and done the first 3 rounds, and so
Right.
you could have a really good team and not perform well one of those first 3 games, and you're out.
Right, and it nearly happened a couple of times. You got some, just you never know from baseball day to day, and we had a couple of 1-run games where we had to come back and win there in the last inning, and now it's the best 2 out of 3, and it makes it a little bit tougher then. Better team usually wins in that best 2 out of 3.
Sure. So you played high school ball. You had a lot of success. You got offers all over the place, I guess, from all across the country to come and pitch. And but you had an opportunity to go in the draft, and so you did. What, 5th round, right?
I was a 5th round pick. Yes.
And so that's pretty high up because baseball has multiple rounds.
Right.
So what was it like to get a call and they say you've been drafted by Milwaukee Brewers, right?
Yes.
What was that like I guess you were 18
Yes.
at the time?
Yes. Well, I just turned 19 actually, just right before I graduated, and but it was one of those things. I'd already signed with the University of Tennessee before my senior year, and a guy by the name of A.J. Brzezinski, which called the big leagues for 22 years. He and I went on all of our recruiting visits together, and ended up signing there together. And he got drafted 3rd round. I got drafted 5th round, and and the draft is a lot different now. There's only 20 rounds now. That back then there used to be 60 rounds. So and there wasn't TV and all this stuff and social media and all this. So it was a lot different. So you get a phone call, hey, we're going to take you next pick if you're still available, and and that's kind of all how it it played out. So you're sitting by the phone just waiting on a call. You couldn't watch it on TV or anything like that. But it was I honestly was not even talking to the Brewers. It'd been the Dodgers, Mets, teams like that, and I got a call from the Brewers and told me they had drafted me, and the rest is really history, because I knew once if I got drafted, I was going to probably go ahead and go and play, and so I forego Tennessee and went on and was very fortunate.
Yeah. And so when you say sitting by the phone, that was literal in those days, right? You didn't get a text message.
Right.
You were really sitting by the phone waiting on the call.
And it was a landline, actually, so,
Yeah,
so there's
sure.
no cell phones or anything like that.
Sure.
So it was a lot different.
A different day for sure. And the money was a little different too then, right? You didn't have a $100,000 signing bonus, I don't suppose.
Well, I was fortunate enough to get a pretty good chunk, at that point in time. There were, but they ended up also paying for my college for 4 years if I wanted to go to college and stuff. So, and which I did take classes, but once you get into the, the rigors of pro baseball, it's hard to take classes and hard to keep up that way.
Well, let's talk about your way up to the bigs. So you got drafted in the 5th round. What was the process then to making it all the way up?
Well, once I got drafted, so usually each team will have 2 rookie ball teams, 2 A-ball teams, 1 AA team, 1 AAA team, and then you make it to the big leagues. So there's 6 or 7 steps with each organization. I got drafted. I went to rookie ball, where most high school guys went. High schoolers did, and so I went there. I'm very fortunate I was there. First year I went 8-0, so it was like wow, this is like high school,
Right.
8-0. Then actually at that point in time, the strike happened the next spring training, so it was right in the middle of the strike, and I thought I was going to be going to high A ball, and I ended up going to low A ball, which was in Beloit, Wisconsin, and so I went to Beloit, and one of those, I struggled a little bit early in the year, and it's one of those things, you struggle, first time you ever struggle in your life, and you're like, what do you do? And so my dad and Coach Booth and a guy by the name of Gary Reedus, who played in the big leagues for a long time, flew up, and they're like, well, guess what? You want to go come home and go get you a job, or do you want to, do you want to still play baseball? What are you going to do? I'd suggest you play baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And so ended up finishing the year good, and went to high ball the next year, done well. And then the next year I was in AA with El Paso, and was leading the league. I think I won 15 games at the All-Star break, made the All-Star team, started the All-Star game. And then by July, I was in the big leagues.
Yeah. And so it's interesting, isn't it, that that the jump, if you're going to make the big leagues, often happens from AA to the bigs rather than AAA to the bigs.
It does. It used to. Then it was a lot more prevalent that way. I actually went to AAA for 1 start, but it was kind of a planned thing where I was going to go there and throw 1 game and then go on up. And there was my pitching coach all the way through the minor leagues was a guy by the name of Mike Caldwell, which pitched 20 years in the big leagues, and So I was fortunate enough to have a guy like that all the way up, and he knew I was going to go to the big leagues before, before I found out, way before I found out. And, they kind of had a plan, but, and then fortunate enough to get to the big leagues. Every kid's dream of, wanting to play professional baseball. You make it to the big leagues and able to play.
Well, talk about that first start, because you started against a legend, Roger Clemens.
Yes.
So talk about that first game, maybe the highlight of your career, as we talked about.
Well, as we were saying earlier, it was all downhill from there. It was, it was one of those things. He was my boyhood idol growing up. I think back then we used to have T-shirts that had the big faces on it. And Oral Hershiser was one of my favorites, but Roger Clemens also. And so get the call, go in the big leagues, and hey, you're going to pitch the first game of a doubleheader in Milwaukee against the Toronto Blue Jays. And come to find out, Roger Clemens is pitching, so it's kind of very ironic. And I never forget my mother saying, "Hey, just do your best. You're not going to win. Just do your best you can.
Right.
And have fun." But after 8 innings, it was funny. After 8 innings, it was 1-0 after 8 innings, and I'd given up 1 hit, struck out 12, and gave up. Actually, the first hit of the game was to Otis Nixon to lead off the game. Was the only hit that I gave up, and I get kidded around a lot about. We do a lot of stuff together. He and I do, and get kidded around a lot about that, him leading off the game with a double.
How about that? Broke up your no-no in the very first inning. But that took the pressure off, didn't it? Because
did.
if you'd had a no-no going into the ninth, you'd have been,
right. Yes, sir. It was. And Clemens was great. And, it was one of those things. He knew that I was a big, fan of his, and he come over after the game and told me to go get my jersey. And, I still have that. He signed the jersey, and everything for me. So got that framed and on the wall. So.
Well, tell us something about the big leagues that the average person would not know or would not guess. There's everybody, of course, sees, I guess nowadays, kind of the glamour of it all, if you will. But tell us something about that experience that we might not know or guess.
Well, it is glamorous, and sometimes, I always tell kids or people that, that do make it, and just playing baseball in general, sometimes we take things for granted, and I think it was one of those things where you always think it was going to be there, and someday somebody's going to tell you can't play anymore, and they're going to tell you to take off the uniform. So, but you don't handle your bags when you're traveling. You fly charter flights, so you pull up to the plane there, walk on the back, and you have everything given to you, everything taken care of, and but the thing that people don't realize, you do have all that, but all these guys, everybody's working extremely hard. Guys are there doing stuff all the time. It is your job. It's your job, and somebody's always there trying to take your job from you. So, you got to figure out a way to keep that from happening. They say that it's easy to make it to the big leagues, but it's a lot harder to stay.
Mm-hmm. The camaraderie in the locker room, that kind of thing, as you're saying, you're there, you're working hard to keep your job, and somebody's always coming along that would like to have your job.
Right.
What does that do to what we might say team? Because, before the NIL and all this craziness now, when you're playing college ball, high school ball, but college ball, you've got guys that are together for a long time. They bond because they've got a common goal of winning the championship, whether it's a state high school championship or NCAA. What's the difference between that and the big leagues in the locker room?
Well, I think it's according to what team you're on. When I was in Milwaukee, we were good, but then I got traded to Cleveland, and then all of a sudden I got 5 Hall of Famers that are on my team, and so that was a lot different because it was more of, you're going to the playoffs, you're going to have a chance to go and win a World Series, and then it becomes more of a team thing. It becomes more of a team game at that point. There always are guys looking over their shoulders and looking, who's in AAA or AA, who's coming up and who's going to come up, and somebody coming up to take my job from me or looking to take your job from you. But you still got to go out every day. You got to go out and do your job. And, it is fun. I think that's one of the main things I miss is the locker room atmosphere, hanging out with the guys. Went a lot of bus rides, very few, but, plane rides and, hanging out, in the locker room, playing cards, rain delays, things like that, that you really miss.
So talk about the difficulty of making it all the way up. I grew up like a lot of kids thinking, boy, I'm going to play in the big leagues one day because I loved baseball and got an opportunity to play, high school baseball, and then 2 years at where you are now. It's Bevill now, but Brewer then. I was on the inaugural team over there, the first 2 teams, if you will, because of those 2 years. but quickly realized, at the college level, and that wasn't even quote unquote a high level of baseball at that time. But we did play against Alabama in the fall and other four-year players in the fall. And I quickly realized I'm not going to be there. I better prepare to get a job. So a lot of parents maybe are investing in their sons now and thinking that, well, if we play 100 games of travel ball when he's 8 years old, he's going to be a big leaguer. But talk some about the odds of making it all the way up.
Well, I can tell you a lot of odds. So, there's actually less than 1% that ever actually make it to the big leagues. And it's funny, we do a lot of events there at the Hall of Fame there in Cooperstown. And there's one stat they always throw out. There's only ever been 23,000 Major League Baseball players ever in the history of baseball. And the way they explain it there is Walmart employs over 2 million people a year. So you kind of look at it in those, those numbers and how that kind of falls into place. And as far as even playing, like, if you're going to play Division I baseball, it's less than 2% kids play. And then to play just in college is less than 3%. So the odds are, it's tough. It's a tough game. Does playing more games at a young age help? No, I do not. I do not believe in any of that. I think that kids need to play games, have fun, play multiple sports. I think one of the big things one of the things I ask every time, it was always asked to me, is when I'm talking to a parent or a kid, I go, what other sports did you play? And a lot of coaches like kids that played football because of the mental toughness of everything going on the grounds of 2-a-days and, the weight training, the physical attributes of it. And so, no, just not playing games at a young age. Do you get to a certain point to where you have to? I do believe you get to a certain point where you have to play better competition.
Right.
13, 14 years old. And, you'll see a lot of guys traveling now and going and playing in Atlanta at Lake Point and East Cobb and different places like that. But in Hoover now and Albertville has great places here in Alabama. But at some point you do, but I don't think as a young kid, no.
Yeah. So it can be overdone early on.
100%. I mean, I was always told your arm only has a certain amount of bullets in your arm, so why use that? Why use that early? Save it for later.
Yeah. And another thing about that, because you've been around it for so long and played at the highest level, is you can see a kid, let's say at age 13 or 14, rarely younger than that, but you can begin to see it a little bit maybe at 13 or 14, but really at 16, let's say 16, 17, 18, you can just kind of look at a kid and say, oh yeah, because they're going to stand out most of the time way out from the crowd, right?
Well, it's funny you say that, because my wife and I have been to, I've went to watch games here and there, and I'll be sitting there and I'm like, nobody on this field can play. It's just like, what do you mean? I don't understand. So you see just by the way a kid walks, the way a kid can, the way he carries himself, the way he is, I guess his mental, the airness about him, I guess, when he's on the field. And you can really tell that real fast. When you go in to actually watch a kid play, I actually want to go watch a kid play and not do well, to be honest with you. It's crazy, because I want to see how he's going to act and what he's going to do when things are not going well. I mean, what are you going to do when you're failing, or you go up there and you strike out 3 times? Are you going to go make a play in the field, or are you going to make another error or something? So I like to see things like that.
Yeah. Well, you now have moved to a different realm, and that is coaching college baseball. You've done a lot of personal instruction across the years, and I know you've coached teams, but first time at the college level.
Right.
And so you stepped in midway through the season last year, and sometimes that can be good, and sometimes it can be difficult, but you had some success once you stepped in.
Well, it was fun. It was fun. I really did enjoy it. So Dr. Haygood, he's funny. We'd had the discussions before about some stuff, and he called me, I think at like at 12 o'clock on a Monday, and he's like, hey, we're making a move here. Can you take over? And I'm like, today? And he's like, yes, actually, you can meet the team tonight and you play tomorrow at 12 o'clock.
Right.
So it was cool. So I got there that night, met the guys, and I actually only knew one player. So Aiden Payne, which is from here in Jasper, Aiden was on the team. So he was the only kid I knew, and he was a leadoff hitter. And I said, okay, make the lineup out for me. Make the lineup out, what you think the lineup should be. And, he did. We actually won that first game, won the second game I was there. It was fun going. I think it was better actually going in like that, because it kind of gave me a heads up with everything, for this year. I think it was, the turning point, because I was able to figure out what I needed instead of coming in dry right now with everything. So it was a blast, and all the kids there were great, and we've got a lot of new guys coming in.
Yeah. Well, and with your connections through a lifetime of baseball, you're going to have guys all over the place now who call up and say, "Hey, Steve, you need to take a look at this kid. Nobody's picked up on him yet, but I'm telling you, this kid." So I'm sure you're getting some of those calls.
Well, I'm getting them every day. I just got one a second ago, but I'm fortunate enough to know guys all across the country. Pro scouts to Division I guys and stuff like that. So where it's kind of actually played into my hands very well is I'll have a pro scout call and say, "Hey, we got a draft guy that's that's here in California that we're needing him to go play for a year somewhere, so we can possibly get him when the draft rolls around." Or maybe a D1 school, which has happened, called and said, "Hey, we need, you got room for this guy to come play for a year, and then we can get him back after this year." So that's where all the connections have come into play at and made this extremely easy, I guess. I don't know easy, but it's been fun. I love the recruiting part of it. I think that's the best part of it for me, because I've got kids coming from Michigan, Idaho, Florida, Texas, everywhere, not only to go with these guys from here in Alabama, but they're coming from everywhere now to come to Bevill.
Sure. And you may even have a Dominican or two somewhere along the way.
We're working on that.
Yes.
We're working on that for sure.
So it'll be an international crew over at Bevill State, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So back to Coach Booth then, and you're playing at Hartselle from 9th grade through senior year for him. So what of Coach Booth lives on in Coach Woodard now at Bevill State?
Well, I mean, everything, every day I'm working with a kid or something. So the big thing with Coach Booth was we never talked about actually fundamentals. We never talked about how you catch a ground ball, how you hit a ball. We just did it. So his philosophy was, you do it 700 times today. You get it right maybe 400. We do it 700 times tomorrow. We might get it right 500. You do it 700 times the next day. So it's all about reps. And baseball is all about repetition and just being, and I tell kids, you could have a bad swing and be a good hitter if you can repeat it. And but one of the sayings that I always use: successful people do daily what unsuccessful people do occasionally. So it's it's one of those things where the more you do it, the better you get at it, and the better chance you have of being not only confident in what you're doing, but it's going to help you be able to succeed in what you're doing.
Yeah. So that's something that you'll be repeating daily and instilling in your guys, so that you can have, they can individually have success, which leads to obviously team success.
100%. I always tell people that baseball's a very selfish sport, to be honest with you, because who's in the batter's box with you? Nobody's in the batter's box with you. Who's on the pitcher's mound with you? Nobody. But you do your job, then you help your team. So, it's one of those things where you can't, a lot of times we worry about everything else going on instead of worrying about yourself and worrying about what you can only control. And that's where, that aspect of teamwork, I think, can come in.
So if you're giving a word to parents in regards to baseball, what do you say to someone who's got a son who's 7 or 8, whatever, 9 or 10, likes baseball, and the parents want him to be successful? What would you say are the essential things at an early age?
Get them off video games and iPads and phones and all this stuff. No, we didn't have that back then. So I think that's where everything's kind of changed, because we were always outside doing something, whether it was throwing a tennis ball up against a brick wall or or hitting a golf ball or doing something. But no, honestly, I think that parents you got to have fun, enjoy your kids, have fun, do things. Don't make everything just all about sports. I think that's one of the things where now everything, it seems like it's just everything revolves around sports, which is great. I love sports too, but yeah, sometimes you can take away from the family. You want to enjoy your family, have fun, and things will kind of happen at the right times when you do things like that.
Yeah. So covered a lot of ground. Anything else we haven't covered that you want to mention or talk about?
No, I'm just thankful. I say thankful to Dr. Haygood and Chris Harris, the softball coach, AD. Everybody here at Bevill, Tana. Everybody's been great. Everybody over there at the Fayette campus. Miss Martha Kimbrell. Miss Martha is the best. Honestly, couldn't have done anything without her, because she's, I bug her to death and talk to her, I think, every day. Even on days she's off, I'm talking. It seems like I talk to her, but it's been great. Everybody's been great to me and helped me out. I mean, a lot. So I'm looking forward to some great things here, Bevill.
Yeah. Well, it's neat sitting here talking to you because of, as we're talking, all the connections that I didn't know that we had. Now, I knew that your stepson, Parker, was a player of mine, so had that connection. I knew that already.
Yes.
But the fact that you're at Bevill State, and I was on the first team over there. You played at Hartselle. I pitched for Curry High School in 1982. We went to Hartselle and ended up upending them in that first round game 2-0, and so got that connection. And then Chris Harris played for me when I was coaching at Walker, and so got all these connections. So it's fun to see. I guess when you're in the baseball world or athletic world, it's not even 6 degrees of separation. Sometimes it's only 1 or 2 degrees of separation, right?
It is that, and it's something that's kind of ironic with the game of baseball is I met my wife actually through Brooke. Brooke, she teaches at T.R. Simmons here in Jasper, elementary, kindergarten, and met her through actually working with Parker, doing lessons and working with Parker. That's how we met. So, so baseball's been great to me, and then got Preston's the other stepson there. He'll be 11th grader and plays basketball here at Jasper. So.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well, all those connections are a wonderful thing, and especially the one now at Bevill with your opportunity to coach there and mold young men from, as we now are saying, from all over the country, maybe outside the country, into baseball players, but also quality young men, and build character into them as well. Because as you know, as you said, someday somebody's going to tell you can't play anymore, and then you got to be prepared to live life, right?
Yeah, 100%. And it's I think Tom Brady that always says, you got to you can't dwell on what just happened. You always have to look forward to the next play or look forward to the next pass. And it wouldn't be Tom Brady without that.
Yeah. Well, Steve, everybody who comes signs the lead poster behind you. So if you'll take the marker and do that. And while Steve is doing that, I'll just remind you that 78 is published every 2 months. It's free to a good home. Quality photography, quality writing, and the stories are just fantastic. So pick up a copy of 78 wherever you can, and if you don't know where to get that, then come by the Blanton building and pick up a free copy here where we are. They'll be happy to give you one. Well, Coach Woodard, it has been a delight to talk with you and wish you much success moving forward in what you do, and looking forward to maybe some of those guys that you're coaching making it all the way up one day.
Yes, sir. Hey, one more thing.
Sure.
September 16th, I do remember we're going to play Wallace State here at the Jasper at the high school field on September 16th, which will be a fall game. So Coach Bubba and I wanted to do that. So it's going to be good. So.
Well, let's get that promoted for sure. September 16th.
September 16th, yes, sir.
Well, that'll be a treat for all of us to be able to see college baseball here, because it's been a while since there's been college baseball, what you might call locally. I know we had it at Summerton at one time, and I think many years ago, Walker College had a team in Jasper, but that was before any of us. So it'll be good to have baseball back. So Coach Woodard, we wish you the best.
Thank you, Pat.
This is Greg Tinker for The Lead saying good afternoon.
The Lead, sponsored by Lavish Boutique, Lavish Coffee, Jasper Veterinary Clinic, Jasper Bone and Joint, and Carl Cannon Chevrolet Buick GMC.